our Mexican immigrants' experience is similar to whatever immigrant group they're presumably a member of.
I was going to mention it's also great that it's about a female, because most of all books, you know, you've got the male as the main person, so it's great when you can have a female.
Yeah, it is good. That's a really, really good book. It's one of my favorites. I think it's an award winner too. I think there's a seal on the front that's saying this book is just awesome. And of course, when we talk about farm workers, we have to talk about Cesar Chavez, you know, the leader of the farm workers movement. This is a fantastic picture book. This is not a picture book for young students. This is a picture book for older students. The reading level is hard. There's a lot of text on the pages. No second grader is going to get through this reading it independently. However, it makes a good read aloud even with middle school students. And I like to read picture books aloud to my students even in middle school. I think it's a great way to launch a history unit if you're doing, or you know, some kind of a topical unit of study, because it takes less than one class period. You have the shared text that you can kind of use to start discussion or start exploration on your topic and to give you some jumping off points. And then it's a great way to integrate art into the classroom too, especially as art programs are cut, because picture books all, you know, hopefully all, but this one especially features really gorgeous watercolor art. So, 45 is a little bit of time. Okay, I'm going to go through in kind of a quicker fashion and read to you highlights of Cesar Chavez's biography. And this book is available in Spanish also. So I'm not sure which one came first, but they're both excellent. Until Cesar Chavez was 10, every summer night was like a fiesta. Relatives swarmed onto the ranch for barbecues with watermelon, lemonade, and fresh corn. Cesar and his brothers, sisters, and cousins settled down to sleep outside, under netting to keep mosquitoes out. But who could sleep, with uncles and aunts singing, spinning ghost stories, and telling magical tales of life back in Mexico? Cesar thought the whole world belonged to his family. The 80 acres of their ranch were an island in the shimmering Arizona desert, and the starry skies were all their own. And at this point in the book, he's living just slightly before Esperanza Rising is set, so in the 1920s, or late 1920s, maybe the early 30s. Skip the page. Many years earlier, Cesar's grandfather had built their spacious adobe house to last forever. I just noticed there's a typo in the book, that's funny. With walls 18 inches thick, a vegetable garden, cows, and chickens supplied all the food they could want. With hundreds of cousins on farms nearby, there was always someone to play with. Cesar's best friend was his brother Richard. They never spent a day apart. Cesar was so happy at home that he was a little afraid when school started. On his first day, he grabbed the seat next to his older sister Rita. The teacher moved him to another seat, and Cesar flew out the door and ran home. It took 3 days of coaxing for him to return to school and take his place with the other first graders. Cesar was stubborn, but he was not a fighter. His mother cautioned her children against fighting, urging them to use their minds and mouths to work out conflicts. So I always love a book where the student doesn't start off as a good, or where the hero doesn't start off as a good student, because that speaks to a lot of students. But then things go bad and the depression hits and his family loses their farm, so they're forced to hit the road and look for farm work as migrants. Cesar's old life had vanished. Now he and his family were migrants, working on other people's farms, crisscrossing California, picking whatever fruits and vegetables were in season. When the Chavez family arrived at the first of their new homes in California, they found a battered old shed. Its doors were missing and garbage covered the dirt floor. Cold, damp air seeped into their bedding and clothes. They shared water and outdoor toilets with a dozen other families, and overcrowding made everything filthy. The neighbors were constantly fighting, and the noise upset Cesar. He had no place to play the games with Richard. Meals were sometimes made of dandelion greens gathered along the road. And things were not any better at school. The towns weren't much better than the fields. White trade only signs were displayed in many stores and restaurants. None of the 35 schools Cesar attended over the years seemed like a safe place either. 35 schools. And that's a reality for migrant students sometimes, even today. Once, after Cesar broke the rule about speaking English at all times, a teacher hung a sign on him that read, "I am a clown, I speak Spanish." He came to hate school because of the conflicts, though he liked to learn. Even he considered his 8th grade graduation a miracle. After 8th grade, he dropped out to work in the fields full-time. So, and this book also provides a good opportunity to talk about our language policies at school. Some of the teachers at my school really strongly discourage students from speaking Spanish. As sad as that is, people feel uncomfortable when people are speaking in a language and they don't know what they're saying, especially when, you know, as teachers we tend to be kind of into being in control of our environments for good reason. But you know, it can create a really hostile environment for our students. Okay. So that's his early life, and now we move into the beginning of his career as an organizer. At the first meeting Cesar organized, a dozen women gathered. He sat quietly in a corner. After 20 minutes, everyone started wondering when the organizer would show up. Cesar thought he might die of embarrassment. "Well, I'm the organizer," he said, and forced himself to keep talking, hoping to inspire respect with his new suit and the mustache he was trying to grow. The women listened politely, and he was sure they did so out of pity. But despite his shyness, Cesar showed a knack for solving problems. People trusted him. With workers, he was endlessly patient and compassionate. With landowners, he was stubborn, demanding, and single-minded. He was learning to be a fighter. In a fight for justice, he told everyone, truth was a better weapon than violence. Nonviolence, he said, takes more guts. It meant using immigration to find ways to overcome powerlessness. More and more people listened. One night, 150 people poured into an old abandoned theater in Fresno. At this first meeting of the National Farm Workers Association, Cesar unveiled its flag, a bold black eagle, the sacred bird of the Aztec Indians. La causa, the cause, was born. It was time to rebel, and the place was Delano. Here, in the heart of the lush San Joaquin Valley, brilliant green vineyards reached toward every horizon. Poorly paid workers hunched over grapevines for most of each year. Then, in 1965, the vineyard owners cut their pay even further. Cesar chose to fight just one of the 40 landowners, hopeful that others would get the message. As plump grapes drooped, thousands of workers walked off that company's fields in a strike, or huelga. Grapes, when ripe, do not last long. So, Cesar organizes this march. And as the march carries on, he gains more and more supporters, and the march becomes bigger and bigger. Single file they continued, covering an average of 15 miles a day. They inched their way through the San Joaquin Valley, where the unharvested grapes in Delano turned white with mold. Cesar developed painful blisters right away. He and many others had blood seeping out of their shoes. The word spread. Along the way, farm workers offered food and drink as the marchers passed by. When the sun set, marchers lit candles and kept going. Okay. And I'm going to kind of abbreviate. He's successful. The farm owners in that case agreed to sign a contract with the workers. It's the first major victory for the farm workers. And I'll just read to you very quickly the author's note. Kind of biographical overview of his life. Are you guys already pretty familiar with his life? Is this kind of a waste of time, or is it?
I'm not that familiar personally.
Cesar Chavez was born near Yuma, Arizona in 1927. Before he founded the National Farm Workers Association, workers had no way to protect themselves. They had the longest hours, lowest wages, harshest conditions, shortest lifespans, and least power of any group of workers in America. We had never thought, Chavez said, that we could actually have any say in our lives. We were poor, we knew it, and we were beyond helping ourselves. After the walk to